In this lesson, we're going to be talking about the Cartesian plane, also known as the number plane. As I'm going through these slides, you should have these slides open in the OneNote and be taking annotations along with me. So that means if you're watching this video right now, you shouldn't just be watching it, you should be taking notes along with me. Let's now go through the learning objectives. So first, we're going to describe the Cartesian plane and correctly label its parts, the axes, the quadrants, and the origin. Next, we want to be able to plot a point at a location expressed as x and y coordinates. And then finally, to understand what a coordinate pair means if one or both numbers is negative. Let's now look at the Cartesian plane. Here it is. Now, the reason why we call it the Cartesian plane was because it was first published by the French mathematician René Descartes, who lived in the 17th century. Here's a picture of him here. Let's now go through a definition of the Cartesian plane. So the Cartesian plane, also known as the number plane, is made from two number lines meeting at a perpendicular angle, which is 90 degrees, creating a grid of coordinates. Let's now learn about different parts of the Cartesian plane. So again, you should be taking notes along with me. So the vertical axis is known as the y-axis. So you should be writing this in the y-axis. And if you look here, here's my vertical axis, and we actually put a little y there, and that's us labeling the y-axis. Next, the horizontal axis is known as the x-axis, the x-axis. If we come here and look at our horizontal axis, we put a little x here, and that's us labeling the x-axis. Next, the center point is known as the origin. So the center point is known as the origin. So come here, and I actually want you to label this point, put a circle here, and put an arrow, and then write origin. Now the origin also has coordinates. We call it 0, 0. So the coordinates of the origin are 0, 0. And we're going to be learning more about coordinates very soon. Let's now move on to labeling the quadrants of the Cartesian plane. Now the word quadrant, hopefully you see the word quad in there. You might think of something like a quad bike. Quad just means 4. So the x and y axes divide the Cartesian plane into 4 sections, which are known as quadrants. We use Roman numerals to label them, Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. They are named counterclockwise, starting from the quadrant on the top right. So again, you should be following along with me. I want you to put a Q1 right here. So this is our first quadrant. Then we have to move counterclockwise. So this will be Q2. This one will be Q3. And finally, this will be Q4. And these are our 4 quadrants of the Cartesian plane. Let's now move on and talk about labeling coordinates. We write coordinates of points with the x coordinate first and the y coordinate second, separated by a comma and inside brackets. Now I've left a big blank box here, and I want us together to write down the proper form of coordinates. So we're first going to open our brackets, then put an x, then put a comma, then put a y, then close our brackets. So this is the proper form of coordinates. So hopefully you've written that down. So at the beginning of the year, you sat a pre-test in which you had to write down some coordinates. And it was interesting to see that some people left out brackets or they didn't put a comma, but the most common mistake were people mixing up which came first, the x or the y. So this form right here, which you've written down, is very important. And you need to make sure that you memorize the correct form of coordinates. So let's now go through some examples. So again, you should be following along with me, taking some notes down. I want you to put in a point here and find what the coordinates would be. So we know that we're first going to look at our x-axis, and our x-coordinate is going to be 2. Then we're going to look at our y-coordinate, which will be 3. So our coordinates of this point is going to be 2, 3. Let's put another point in. Let me come down here. So I'm going to label it now. My x-coordinate is -5. And my y-coordinate is -3. Now we previously learnt what the coordinates of the origin were. They are 0, 0. And let me put an arrow in there. Now, the reason why that's important, because knowing that is going to help us find the coordinates of points when they're lying on the axis itself. So here's an example right here. So what is the coordinates of this point? Well, they're going to be 5, 0. And the reason for that is because my x coordinate is going to be 5, but my y coordinate is going to be 0 because I haven't gone up or down. So it's 5 because I've gone 5 to the right, but 0 because I haven't gone up nor down. Let's look at another one. Let me come up here. What would the coordinate be of this point? Well, this time I haven't gone left or right. So that means my x coordinate will be 0, but I've gone up 6, so it's going to be 0, 6. And again, we could repeat that for this coordinate. This time I haven't gone left or right, so my x coordinate will be 0, but I've gone 4 down, so it's going to be negative 4. Let's do one more for good measure. How about this one right here? Well, this time I've gone left 5 units, so I'd say negative 5, but I haven't gone up or down, so it's going to be 0. So hopefully you've gotten all those examples down. Let's now move on to our next slide. This is where I want you to pause the video and plot the following coordinates on the Cartesian plane. So pause the video now and give this a go. So how did you go labeling these coordinates? Let's now go through them together. So A is 2, 3. So the way I'm going to find that is first going to 2 on my x-axis, then going to 3 on my y-axis. It's going to be there. That is going to be A. Let's now go to B, which is 0, 4. So I'm going to go to 0 on my x-axis, which is here, then 4 on my y-axis, which is here. So that will be B. Another way you could think about this is that this 0 means I'm neither going left or right, but I'm going only 4 up. And that's what we did right here. Let's now go on to C, which is negative 1, 2. So I'm going to go to negative 1 on my x-axis, then 2 in my y-axis. So it's going to be there. That is going to be C. Next I have D, which is negative 3, 0. So I'm going to go to negative 3 on my x-axis, which is here. Then I'm going to go 0 on my y-axis, which means I'm just going to stay where I am. So that's going to be D. And again, another way you could think about this is that I'm going 3 units left, but I'm not going up or down. So I'm just staying where I am. Let's now go on to E, which is negative 2 and negative 2, which is a nice and easy one. Negative 2, negative 2. It's right here. That is going to be E. And finally, F, which is 2, negative 4. So I'm going to go to 2 on my x-axis, then negative 4 on my y-axis, which is going to be there, which is going to be F. So how did you go labeling all those points? Don't worry too much if you struggled. That just means you need some more practice. But hopefully everyone's gotten down those notes right here, so you can refer to them later on. So let's now move on to example 2. So again, I want you to pause the video and state the following coordinates of points A to F. So this time we're kind of going backwards. I've given you the points and now I want you to tell me what the coordinates are. So pause the video and give it a go. So how did you go with this question? Let's now go through it together. So A is going to be 5 and 0. And that's because I've come to my 5 on my x-coordinate, but I haven't gone up or down, so it's going to stay at 0. What is B going to be? Well, here I am. So first I'm going to look at my x, which is 3. Then I'm going to look at my y, which is negative 3. So it's going to be 3, negative 3. Next, C. C is here. As you can see, I haven't gone left or right. I'm staying at my x-coordinate of 0, but I've gone 5 down. So that means it's going to be 0, negative 5. Let's keep on going to D. So here I'm going to look at my x-coordinate first, which is negative 6. Then I'm going to look at my y-coordinate, which is 6. So that's going to be the coordinates of the point D. Let's now go on to E. So E, I'm at negative 4 on my x-axis, but I haven't gone up or down. So that means I've stayed at 0 for my y-coordinate. And finally, we have F. F, let me first look at my x-coordinate, which is negative 5, and then look at my y-coordinate, which is negative 4. So how did you go with that question? Hopefully you were successful, but if not, don't worry. Make sure you get all these notes down. There's going to be plenty of practice for you to do in your homework. Let's now go through the final example. So again, I want you to pause the video and label the following coordinates on the Cartesian plane. And this time I want you to note the fact that it looks a little bit different. We'll put them into a table of values, which isn't going to change things, but you just need to know how to read something like this. So pause the video and give it a go. So how did you go with this question? Well, what you needed to know was the fact that this right here, -3 and -2, that's one coordinate. So that's going to be my x coordinate is -3 and my y is -2. So the coordinates that I'm looking at are -3, -2, which I can plot really easily as here. This next one is going to be -2, -1, -2, -1. So that means I'm going to come to -2, then go down to -1, which is going to be there. Then finally we have 3, 4, which is going to be 3, 4. So again, I'm looking at my x, I'm looking at my y, and I'm making sure that I'm putting them in the right order. I've now got it in that form, and I know that's going to be 3, 4 up here. So hopefully you're able to label all those points. Don't worry if you weren't successful, just make sure that you have these notes written down. Let's now review what we learned in this lesson. So here are our learning objectives, which we started with. So hopefully at the end of this lesson, we are able to describe the Cartesian plane and correctly label its parts. We know what axes are, we know what quadrants are, and we know where the origin is. Hopefully we are able to plot a point at a location expressed as x and y coordinates. And finally, we understand what a coordinate pair means if one or both numbers is negative. Hopefully this lesson has helped you and you took notes down as I went through it with you. Now make sure you complete your homework for this topic. See ya.